As the Russian war in Ukraine enters its second month, the West held a trio of summits aimed at showing unity against Russia's war in Ukraine. Now, Western allies have responded with new sanctions against Russia, promises of military aid, and discussion of expelling Moscow from the international G20 body. U.S. President Joe Biden pulled off a day of intense diplomacy in Brussels. Biden said his top priority at the meetings was to make certain that the West stayed on the same page in its response to Russian aggression against Ukraine. Biden also added that Putin was banking on NATO being split, but NATO is stronger today than ever. He also added that Putin is getting exactly the opposite of what he intended to have as a consequence of going into Ukraine. In response to Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, Biden and Western allies pledged billions of dollars in humanitarian aid, as well as new sanctions against Russia. Billions of dollars of military hardware have already been provided. Biden also noted that under his presidency, the United States has pledged $2 billion in weapons to Ukraine. He announced a new commitment to more than $1 billion in humanitarian assistance. Biden also promised to welcome 100,000 of nearly 3.7 million refugees fleeing the country.
And today, I'm announcing the United States is prepared to commit more than $1 billion in humanitarian assistance to help get relief to millions of Ukrainians affected by the war in Ukraine. Many Ukrainian refugees will wish to stay in Europe, closer to their homes. But we also will welcome 100,000 Ukrainians to the United States with a focus on reuniting families. And we will invest $320 million to bolster democratic resilience and defend human rights in Ukraine and neighboring countries.
Biden also intensified the effort to ostracize Russia with a call to exclude Moscow from G20. U.S. President said he thinks Russia should be removed from the group of 20 major economies, adding that if countries do not agree with removing Russia, then Ukraine should be allowed to attend the meetings as well.
Do you think that Russia needs to be removed from the G20?
On the latter point, my answer is yes. That depends on the G20. That was raised today, and I raised the possibility if that can't be done, if Indonesia and others do not agree, then we should, in my view, ask to have both Ukraine be able to attend the meetings, as well as basically Ukraine being able to attend the G20 meeting and observe.
The leaders spent the day crafting their next steps to counter Russia's invasion. They huddled over how they might respond should Putin deploy chemical, biological, or even a nuclear weapon. Biden said that the United States and NATO would respond if Russia uses chemical weapons in Ukraine.
And to clarify on chemical weapons, if chemical weapons were used in Ukraine, would that trigger a military response from NATO?
It would trigger a response in kind. Whether or not you're asking whether NATO would cross, we'd make that decision at the time.
WION correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report from New York. Let's listen in.
U.S. President Joe Biden had a day of emergency summits on the Russian invasion of Ukraine in Brussels on Thursday. He said that he favors Russia being kicked out of the G20, and apparently it was a conversation that he said was mentioned in almost every single meeting he had with his European counterparts. Meanwhile, the United States announced that it would allow 100,000 Ukrainian refugees into the country with a focus on the most vulnerable. As anticipated, more sanctions were imposed on Russia, and the U.S. president said that the United States would respond should Russia launch a chemical or biological attack against Ukraine. The nature of the response would depend on the nature of the use. Those were the comments made by the U.S. president during a press conference when asked what kind of response did the U.S. have in mind. And finally, President Biden and allied leaders still can't or won't meet President Zelensky of Ukraine's request for more planes. Meanwhile, Volodymyr Zelensky did not ask to join NATO, nor did he ask for a no-fly zone when he addressed the NATO summit in Brussels via video conference on Thursday. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.